Hi, I'm Becky. I married into a family that smiled in public, but behind closed doors, they erased me. On a family vacation, my father-in-law stood up, looked me dead in the eyes, and called me just the assistant. They cropped me out of photos. They rewrote the itinerary to remove my name. Then they dared to say I didn't belong. But here's what they didn't know. I recorded everything. And in court, he wasn't so loud anymore. What broke him wasn't the evidence. It was what I said and who stood beside me when I said it. They say a family vacation brings people together. But from the second we pulled into the driveway of that beach house in Myrtle Beach, I knew I'd made a mistake. We were all there, his entire family, the patriarch Arthur, his overly polished wife Sandra, their perfect older son, his wife Lauren, who somehow glowed without trying, and then me, Becky, the youngest daughter-in-law, the one still trying to prove she belonged. The house looked like something out of a rental catalog, fake nautical decor, seashell wind chimes clinking in the salty air. But behind every nice to see you and half hug, I saw it. That thin veil of tolerance they wore like sunscreen, applied just enough to keep up appearances, but not a drop more. They gave me the smallest room, next to the noisy back deck. No closet, one lamp, no one batted an eye. "Oh, we thought you wouldn't mind." "Sure, of course not. I was just grateful to be included, right?" I didn't say anything. I smiled, put my bags down. And my husband Ryan shrugged when I whispered about it. "It's just a room, babe. Don't make it a thing." He always said that. Don't make it a thing. Don't rock the boat. Meanwhile, I was already treading water, trying not to drown. The first night passed in a haze of stiff conversations and too much wine. Lauren showed pictures of their new backyard renovation. Arthur chuckled over some old business story. And me? I refilled everyone's glasses. No one noticed. By the second day, I was the only one in the kitchen. Dishes piled up like a test I didn't study for. Sandra smiled sweetly. "You're just so much better at this stuff." I wasn't, but I did it anyway. Arthur came in around noon, sat at the counter while I chopped onions. "You're lucky, you know," he said. "Not many girls from your background land this kind of life." I wiped my hands, forced a smile. "What kind of background do you think I come from, Arthur?" He chuckled, waved it off. "No offense. I just meant, well, you're not exactly Lauren, are you?" No, I wasn't. Lauren had a real estate license, a baby on the way, and the family's complete adoration. I had good intentions. Later that afternoon, they went out for paddleboarding. No one asked if I wanted to come. Ryan didn't even glance my way as he followed them out the door. I cleaned the kitchen. Again, dinner was supposed to be special. A fancy beachfront restaurant, candlelight, everyone dressed up. I put on a blue dress Ryan once said he liked. He didn't compliment it this time, didn't even look. We ordered wine, laughed politely. I tried to join the conversation, only to be talked over or ignored. Then Arthur raised his glass. "You know," he started, his voice already drunk with confidence. "When Becky first joined this family, I thought she was just shy. Turns out, she just didn't have much to say." Laughter, actual laughter, around the table. My hands clenched under the tablecloth. He continued, "Remember that Thanksgiving? She burned the stuffing. Twice. Sandra had to remake the whole thing." My chest tightened. It wasn't funny. I hadn't burned anything. That was Lauren. But no one corrected him, not even Ryan. I felt my face flush, every eye on me, every smirk like a slap. Arthur lifted his glass. "To the ones who try their best, even if they can't quite fit in." I stood up. Not dramatically, just enough. "Excuse me," I said, pushing my chair back. No one stopped me. No one asked if I was okay. I locked the bathroom door behind me and finally let the tears fall. I hated that I still cared. Hated that their approval still meant something. My mind flicked to a childhood memory, sitting in a classroom as a teacher made fun of my accent, the same burn on my cheeks, the same silence from everyone around me. Back then, I thought I'd grow out of being invisible. Turns out, I'd just gotten better at pretending it didn't hurt. I stared at myself in the mirror, mascara smudged, eyes bloodshot, I looked like someone I didn't recognize, not weak, just tired of trying. I wiped my face, straightened my shoulders. This wasn't about stuffing or bad jokes. This was about years of being politely sidelined. I walked back to the table. No one noticed. The laughter had returned. Ryan looked at me briefly, then went back to sipping his drink. I didn't eat, I didn't speak, I just listened. And then Arthur waved the check. Since you didn't contribute much else, you can at least handle this, sweetheart. I took the bill, folded it once, then again. And in that moment, something shifted. Not broken, but reassembled. I stood, my voice calm, even. You'll all remember this night, trust me. Morning light spilled through the blinds, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling until my stomach twisted in knots. Pretending yesterday's disaster never happened seemed easier than facing everyone again. I slid quietly out of bed, dressed, and walked into the kitchen. The house felt hollow, like someone had muted the laughter. No one spoke of last night. My husband Luke brewed coffee without asking if I wanted any. He mentioned the funny dinner line, trying to laugh it off. It landed flat. I forced a smile, started making breakfast anyway. Eggs, toast, coffee, like I belonged in the rhythm of kitchen chores. No one asked if I needed help. No one said thanks. But my fingers shook as I plated food and set the table. As I worked, I opened my phone and typed into a note. Names, snippets of conversation, times, just in case. I didn't believe I was overreacting. I believed I was collecting proof, a quiet witness to what passes for family love. Later, plans for a boat outing circulated. I wasn't on the group chat. When I asked, they said, "We only have 6 spots." Arthur offered, "Maybe stay inside, rest." Luke kissed my forehead and walked away. I had lunch alone, staring at the sandwich I made. It sat untouched. Each bite would taste bitter with meaning. I journaled. Left out again. I matter more than they think. I traced names, dates, slivers of voice in memos. No pettiness, just evidence. The housekeeper Dolores knocked on my door, asked if I needed a fresh towel. She paused, studied my face. "You look like you've carried water in silence too long," she said softly. She told me of her daughter-in-law, treated like an outsider in her own home. "Don't wait for people to give you dignity. Sometimes you take it quietly." I didn't answer, but her words burrowed. I slipped her a cup of coffee. In that moment, I resolved, I don't need their approval anymore. I need to know my own worth. That evening, they gathered by the fire pit. I was asked to play photographer, not join the circle. Arthur teased, "You're safer behind the lens." Laughter spread. Luke laughed too. My silence didn't feel weak. It's strategy. I stood, checked phone backup, peeked at legal forums. I was done being erased. Late that night, a message popped in from Tara. I saw what happened. That was cruel. She admitted fear, but shared past screenshots of family gossip about me. My hands steadied. Clarity rose. They tried to make me small. Now they'd made me careful. I sat out back on the rental's deck, legs curled under me, a blanket draped over my shoulders, more out of habit than need. The sky above was clear, scattered with stars that felt too far away to mean anything. I held my phone in one hand, thumb hovering over the play button on a voice memo I'd accidentally recorded the night before during the fire pit talk. My stomach twisted. I pressed play. Arthur's voice, low and smug, came through. "She's exhausting, always pretending she belongs here." Laughter followed, sharp and familiar. Luke. He didn't say anything to defend me. Nothing, just laughed along like it was truth. I stared ahead, jaw clenched. I opened my notes app, titled the file. Documented, July 12, 2023. Audio file, 03. Then I typed every word I heard, time-stamped. Not for drama, for clarity, for evidence. I sat still for a long time after that, letting the night press in on me, let it sit on my chest. Then, quietly to no one but myself, I said, "You're not crazy, you're just not quiet anymore." The next morning, I moved through the kitchen slow, avoiding conversation, letting the smell of bacon and burnt toast distract the others. Tara caught me by the elbow near the hallway. "Come with me," she murmured. We stepped into the laundry room. She shut the door, looked over her shoulder, then back at me. "I've noticed it too, for years," she whispered. They need someone to blame, someone to pick at. You became the easiest one. I leaned against the dryer, arms crossed. And you just watched? She winced. I tried once, said something. They iced me out for months. Birthdays, holidays, nothing. There was a pause. Then she pulled out her phone, scrolled, and played a voicemail. Arthur again. Becky's job? Please. That's not work. It's a hobby for women who can't handle real pressure. I didn't react. Not outwardly. Tara tucked her phone away. I didn't delete it. Thought you might need to hear it. Why now? I asked. She hesitated. Because you looked done last night, and I know that look. I nodded. Thanks. But inside, her fear was loud. Not just about me. About what they'd do to her if she helped. I filed that away. I climbed the stairs and locked the bathroom door. Cold tile, yellow light. I stared at the woman in the mirror. My hair looked fine. Makeup faded. But my eyes, they were tired in a way I couldn't justify anymore. I leaned closer. You let them convince you you were lucky to be tolerated, I said aloud. Tears welled. I didn't wipe them right away. Just stood there, letting them sit on my cheeks until one slipped down. My fingers reached my right hand. A chipped nail, 3 weeks old, maybe more. Just one more thing I hadn't taken care of. One more way I'd disappeared. I grabbed my phone, opened a new note, and typed in bold, "Why I'm done." Then I listed it all. Arthur's remarks. Luke's silence. The birthdays I organized, the errands I ran, the times I was the joke at the table. One by one, I gave them names. When I finished, I stared at myself again. Shoulders back this time, chin up. This is the last trip I come here as the family's joke. Later, I made my way downstairs. The house was buzzing with casual conversation. I went to the kitchen to pour myself a cup of coffee. Arthur walked in behind me. He didn't say hello, just grabbed the mug next to mine. It's good to know who's loyal around here, he said casually. Outsiders? They don't last. He never looked at me, just sipped and walked out, but I heard it for what it was. Not a comment, an instruction, a line drawn, and a warning. I waited until the room was empty, then opened my voice memo app. I recorded everything, the tone, words, time, place. I saved it. Then I forwarded the file to Melissa, my best friend, with a simple text. If anything happens, remember this. It was the first time I saw Arthur clearly, not as the charming older brother everyone adored, but as a man who knew exactly how to keep power, with threats that sounded like conversation. That night, I couldn't sleep. The fan above the bed spun slow, clicking just enough to keep me staring. I checked my phone out of reflex. A new message blinked on the screen. Rachel, a friend from college, now a lawyer. I'd helped her with a referral years ago when she was just starting out. Her message, let's talk. I think you've got a case. I sat up. Everything felt heavy and light all at once. This ends with me, but not how they think. I walked along the shoreline, bare feet sinking into damp sand. The salt air should have calmed me, but my mind refused to obey. Yesterday's humiliation and Tara's warning hovered like a storm cloud. Dolores's words, "You steal your dignity back," played on repeat in my head. I paused where waves lapped at shore, my phone still tucked in my pocket, face down. I didn't want to look at it yet. Blame, insult, silence. I'd swallowed enough. As I turned back toward the rental, the house looming in the distance, I steeled myself. Tonight, I would no longer be invisible. Dinner on the patio was meant to be soft light and shared smiles. Instead, it felt like minefield. Arthur addressed the group. Let's all remember our roles in this family. His voice was casual, even gentle. Then he added, some people join a family, others just pass through. The line echoed across the table. I felt every head turn, every person's eyes flicking to me. I swallowed. Then quietly, I said, I joined because I believed in family, not to be a placeholder. Silence fell. Luke's shoulders tensed. Voices died down. The air felt tight, ready to snap. I slipped away from the table before dessert, claiming fresh air. Luke followed. He said softly, "You didn't need to say that." I stopped and looked at him. I didn't ask to be invisible anymore. He stuttered, opening his mouth, then closing it. His eyes searched mine. On the path toward the beach, I pulled my phone from my bag, flicked through voicemails, emails, the screenshots I kept hidden. He reached to touch my wrist, lightly, cautiously, but I pulled back. Boundaries drawn. For the first time, I saw him as someone forced to choose between them and me. Inside, I moved quietly toward the bedroom I'd guessed held the safe. The door was unlocked. I slipped inside and opened it. There, tucked behind old receipts, sat a bound folder marked Property Titles. My heart pounded. I flipped through pages, my name erased here, cut out there. I photographed it, time-stamped images. I crossed to the desk, compared contract drafts I had kept. The differences stung. I drafted a note in my phone. If I disappear, this folder still exists. Share it. Then I forwarded it quietly to Tara and Quaid, tagging them both. My palms trembled, not with fear, but resolve. Late night, the house darkened. I carried the folder into the main living room. I paused in the doorway, breath steady, folder against my chest. Arthur sat on the couch, remote in hand, drink beside him. Unaware I stood there. I cleared my throat. The walls between us, the silence, everything waiting. And I knew. Whatever came next would change everything. After dinner, the others trickled out toward the fire pit again, but I stayed back. Something in me said, "Wait." I walked into the common room, and there it was. A stack of cream-colored envelopes tied with navy ribbon, left neatly on the table. I picked one up. A schedule for tomorrow's brunch and wine tasting. Beneath it, formal invitations for everyone. All sealed, each labeled. I looked through the pile. Luke's was there. Arthur's too. Even Zelina had one. But not me. I went through them again, slower this time. Nothing. My heart didn't drop, it clenched. I slipped one of the invites open, pretending to read casually in case anyone walked in. My name wasn't on the list, not as guest, not even as afterthought. I walked back into the hallway, held it up to Luke. "Did they forget to include me?" I asked, voice light, controlled. He barely glanced at it. "Maybe it's a print error," he said, eyes flicking anywhere but mine. I laughed like it was a joke. Then slid the invitation into my pocket, folded in half. The next morning, the breakfast table was quiet, too quiet. I sat across from Zelina, hoping for some kind of warmth. Anything. She didn't blink. Just sipped her coffee, eyes blank. Passive, but deliberate. I remembered all the times she'd made soft corrections in front of others. "Maybe let the men talk now, sweetheart," she'd once said, smiling. I used to chalk it up to generational habits. Not anymore. Arthur took a slow sip from his cup and said, loud enough for everyone, "Tradition defines who belongs here. Some people are just guests." The silence that followed was cold steel. And the glance Zelina gave him? It wasn't confusion. It was approval. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. The message was loud enough without sound. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. But inside me, something had shifted. It wasn't sadness. It was resolution. After breakfast, I waited for Luke to leave the kitchen, then cornered him in the hallway. "How can you just sit through that?" I asked. "You heard him." Luke sighed. "I didn't want to make it worse." I stared at him. "You think silence makes it better?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I'm caught in the middle. They're still my family." "And what am I?" I asked, softer now. "Just your plus one?" He hesitated. "You know it's not that simple." "No," I said, voice steady. "It's always been that simple. Loyalty either means something or it doesn't." He looked away. "I'd rather walk alone than keep living in a house of mirrors." I didn't yell it, didn't cry, just said it like truth, like stone. He didn't follow me as I walked away. I pulled the invitation from my pocket. Its folded edge was soft now from being held too tight, too long. Back in the room, I sat at the desk, pulled out the folder. laid the documents out. The title discrepancies, the recorded clips, now this invitation, or lack of it. I layered them like puzzle pieces. Patterns became clear. I opened a voice memo. Tara, Quaid, I'm getting close. If they push me again, I'm going public. I'll need you both. I paused, then hit send. Then I opened the family group chat, typed, just found out I wasn't invited to tomorrow's event. Funny how visibility works. My thumb hovered. Then I deleted it. Not yet. Timing mattered more than fire. I placed the invitation on top of the folder and shut it slowly. It clicked shut like a vault door. Late that night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard the knock. Soft, deliberate. I opened the door. No one there. But on the floor, an envelope. I bent to pick it up. It was the invitation. My name was now handwritten in cursive, a different ink, a smudge where it wasn't dry when folded. It wasn't a correction. It was an afterthought. I stood in the doorway, moonlight behind me. I looked at that name, Becky, scratched in like an apology no one meant. I held the paper in one hand and whispered, "So now they want me to play along." I let the envelope fall to the floor. Not anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, folder open, screen glowing faint blue in the dim light. Every file, every voice memo, every overlooked detail, I laid them out in my mind like pieces on a chessboard, the doctored contract, the missing invitation, Arthur's smug tone recorded in quiet corners. I wasn't holding on to these things because I wanted a fight. I held them because I needed clarity, because I'd stopped mistaking tolerance for love. I kept replaying my opening line over and over, not to win sympathy, not to plead, just to name truth. That was all. One sentence, calm and full. I glanced at the family photo on the shelf. I was in the back row, of course. Luke's hand barely touching mine. My smile was polite, the kind you give when you're trying not to blink during a long exposure. I whispered to myself, "Tonight, I speak, not for applause, for meaning." Then I waited. After dinner, Arthur called everyone to the lounge for one of his family discussions. Everyone knew what that meant. He'd play king around the fire, give a speech, then expect nods of agreement. The couches were full. He opened with the usual, trips down memory lane, exaggerated stories, a couple digs at how soft everyone's gotten. Then he leaned back and said, "Let's go around. Say what you appreciate most about being here, part of this family." Zelina spoke first, something vague about roots and tradition. Luke said something half-hearted about togetherness, eyes fixed on the floor. Isolde, sweet but safe, praised the food. Then it was my turn. I stood. I was told once that I was only passing through this family, just a guest. I let the pause sit. But behind the scenes, I've been the glue. I booked trips, handled calls, covered your mistakes, smiled through your coldness, and I brought receipts. I opened the folder. One by one, I laid out the evidence. The original contract with my name clearly included. The revised version, my name gone. Screenshots of group messages I was cut from. Recordings, including Arthur's voice, mocking my career. You could feel the shift in the air, the tightness. Arthur's smile froze. Zelina blinked like someone had opened a window in a closed room. No one moved. I stood there, spine straight, voice steady. This isn't about revenge, it's about recognition. Arthur broke the silence with a chuckle. "Becky, come on. This is overblown." He leaned forward. "You're twisting everything to play victim. I have emails." He pulled one out, printed, highlighted. "Where you question my decisions, undermining the family's vision." He lifted it like proof. "You wanted to be seen? Now you are, and not in a flattering light." He looked around the room, inviting agreement. I didn't move, didn't speak yet. He continued. "You made this mess. You're turning a vacation into a courtroom." I let him finish, let him puff up and throw his weight around. Then I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the invitation they slipped under my door. The one with my name handwritten, late and smudged. I held it up. "This," I said quietly, "was never about forgetting. It was about exclusion." I walked to the coffee table, placed it gently beside the files. You may not have meant for me to belong, but I was never invisible. And now, I'm not silent. I turned to Luke. I hope you remember this moment, because I will. Then I walked, past the couches, past the stunned stares. I didn't wait for permission, or questions, or apologies. Outside, the hallway was dim. I heard a stir of voices behind me. Steps. Someone was following. I didn't look back. The door creaked open behind me. A figure stood in the threshold, hesitant. I kept walking, not fast, but deliberate. My chest rose with each breath. The air outside hit my face, cool and clean. It didn't feel like escape. It felt like ownership. The room emptied fast. Arthur's face twisted with anger as he stormed out toward his study. The air still vibrated with the weight of truth I dropped moments ago. Luke approached me cautiously. We need to cool things down before this becomes permanent, he whispered. I nodded, though my heart pounded like a drum. Pandora's box was open. Not for show, for justice. Behind me, I heard Isolde and Zelina exchange quiet whispers. I smelled the damage control beginning. I slipped away to my bedroom, closed the door, and exhaled deep. In the darkness, I replayed every sneer, every recording, every line I had spoken. The weight of this moment settled on my shoulders, and I felt alive. Morning came with quiet cruelty. Luke handed me a note slid under my door. House rules changed. Shift your role in this family or step out of it. My breath caught. Then I saw it. The vacation schedule republished. Every listing now put me under the label assistant instead of wife. In the margins, Arthur had scrawled, "Role defines respect. My place in this family reduced." I held the paper with trembling fingers, saved a photo with timestamp before anything else. The move was bold, symbolic. They were trying to erase me. I whispered inside. They're trying to reduce me again. Only this time, I won't shrink. At night, under the moon's glare by the pool deck, I found them. Arthur speaking forcefully, Luke struggling to speak back. The tension hung in the humid air. I flicked on my phone flashlight and stepped forward. You do not decide who I am, I said, voice calm but firm. Arthur glared. I control this household structure. We decide who fits where. Luke looked between us, pained. The confrontation cracked the veneer. The structure would change tonight. I held my phone up and projected side-by-side images for all to see. Invitation pages labeled assistant versus original documents where I was clearly marked wife. I narrated contract changes, recordings, deleted texts. Arthur sputtered. Zelina gasped. The evidence filled the space between us louder than any shouting. Luke stepped forward, voice shaking. We need truth, not theater. The balance shifted. The power that had been hidden surfaced. Arthur jerked his head, eyes blazing. He snatched the note from my hand and crumpled it, barking, Pack your things, you're leaving tonight. Luke hesitated. I stood tall, phone in hand. The first raindrops fell. A storm breaking outside mirrored the one inside the house. I whispered, steady but fierce, I'm not leaving tonight. Not for you. The living room was too quiet when we all sat down again that evening. Arthur stood beside the TV, straightening his tie like it was armor. We thought it'd be nice to end this vacation with a little celebration, he said. Then came the projector hum. He queued up a family slideshow. All smiles, all curated moments. I sat in the corner, folder tucked under my arm, my jaw set. My face flickered once on screen, barely, then gone. Another photo, cropped. A third. I was labeled guest. Laughter echoed in the room, but not mine. Then, with practiced fanfare, Arthur announced a thank you video, crafted by Isolde and Zelina. The screen dimmed, music played, faces I'd fed, supported, tolerated. They danced across the screen like heroes. My face never appeared. Not once. I stared, still as stone, while the video gushed praise for those who truly contributed. Arthur's voice narrated over it all. Every second that passed chipped at my ribs. I stood slowly. Is this how you define contribution? My tone didn't shake. Not anymore. Luke lowered his eyes. Zelina's cheeks flushed, stiff. Isolde looked away like she'd swallowed something bitter. Arthur's smile faded. The first crack in that polished face. The room sat heavy with silence, the kind that doesn't go away when you open windows. It stays. I reached into my folder and drew out the reprinted invitation labeled Assistant. I walked to the screen and clicked. The TV switched to a side-by-side view, the version they printed, next to the original where wife was written in clear, bold text. I let the room absorb that. Then, softly, "Your family didn't just minimize me. You deleted me. From your plans, your records, your memory." Arthur shot up. "You're twisting things. You always twist things." His voice cracked more than he wanted it to, but I didn't need to answer him. I just left the images on the screen, let them echo louder than words ever could. Then from the back, a voice I hadn't expected. "She did more in a day than most of you manage in a month." Dolores, the housekeeper. She stepped forward, calm but fierce. "I saw her care for this place like it was her own. I saw what you chose not to." Everyone turned. Arthur's jaw worked, but no sound came. Dolores kept going. "They made her feel optional so long she started believing it, but I didn't, not once." I looked at her, and for the first time in days, something warm lit up inside me. Not victory, recognition, the kind that fills in what silence tried to erase. I nodded to her. "Thank you." The energy shifted. No yelling, just the unmistakable shift of truth making its way through cracks. Then came the knock. The door creaked open. Arthur's assistant walked in, handed him an envelope. He opened it, stiffened. Something shifted in his eyes. Sharp, calculating. "There's something you all should see," he said slowly, lifting the envelope. "But first, Becky, you're not leaving this house tonight." My body went still. The room seemed to contract. Whatever was in that envelope, it wasn't over. The courtroom lights buzzed low above us, but I didn't blink. I stood tall. No papers trembling in my hands this time, no second guessing. Just facts, proof, my voice, clear. "A child once asked me why someone wouldn't love me, and tonight, this courtroom is going to have to answer that." The words hung in the air like a bell tolling. Arthur sat, frozen. His lawyer shuffled nervously, laying out their so-called evidence, doctored contracts, selective recordings. But I was ready. I submitted the originals. Real-time recordings. Invitations reclassified. Statements from Dolores. And more importantly, silence I had suffered turned into words I now owned. Tara gave a soft nod from behind me. Dolores, in the corner, arms folded, face steady. I wasn't just presenting a case. I was finishing a sentence I had started years ago. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Balance, visibly, was shifting. Then came the fall. Arthur gripped the bench like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "This isn't over," he hissed, just loud enough for the first two rows to hear. His hands shook. He stumbled out of his chair, knocking over his own briefcase. Pages spilled. He didn't bother to gather them. The courtroom murmured, not in judgment, but shock. Luke's hand found mine, warm and unspoken. Isolde turned her back, not out of anger, out of realization. This wasn't theater anymore. This was the unmasking. The judge ruled in my favor, not just legally, morally. I walked out with my spine straight, my breath long, vindicated, but not gleeful. This was never about revenge. This was about calling a lie by its name. We stepped out into the daylight. The breeze hit my face like the first full breath after a long tunnel. Then, from the steps, a small voice. "Cousin Becky?" I turned. My little cousin, the one who'd always clung to his dad's leg during dinners. "Did Daddy really mean you were just passing through?" I knelt, not to soften the truth, but to say it from eye level. "No, sweetheart. Some people close doors on you, but that doesn't mean you weren't meant to be in the room." He nodded slowly, his small face working to understand something far too adult. Behind him, reporters held their mics back, family held their breath. But that moment, that honest moment, said more than headlines ever could. I rose. The child smiled, hand in mine, for a second longer than necessary. That evening, we returned to the rental one last time. No one spoke much. I moved room by room, pausing, not to mourn, but to remember. The kitchen I cooked in without thanks. The hallway where I used to wait while others figured out plans. I found the old napkin, dandelions stitched into the corner, tucked where I left it behind the drawer. I folded it carefully, placed it in my pocket. At the kitchen table, I left a letter, short, measured. This house was never mine, but the truths I carried through it, they are. Luke waited by the door. His face held regret, but also something else. Admiration, maybe. Zelina lingered by the veranda. Her eyes didn't roll this time. They lowered. Maybe the first sign of seeing, maybe not. I stepped outside, bag in hand. The air didn't push against me anymore. It moved with me. I leave not as a guest, I whispered to myself, but as someone reborn. The engine started as the house grew smaller in the rear view, but I didn't feel small. The napkin in my pocket was a reminder of quiet strength. The child's question, a reminder of what matters. My phone buzzed once. A message from Quaid. They'll be hearing from me, and will ensure they never disregard you again. The story wasn't finished, but for now, it was enough to know. I was no longer the woman waiting for a seat at their table. I'd built my own,